Episode 2 of Season 2 of Silo is here, and it followed on from a relatively isolated episode last week where we saw the result of Jules stepping outside of the silo, walking over the hill and going into Silo 17, which was almost a relic in itself. This episode allowed us to see Silo 18's reaction to what they saw and how it had changed the mood of the entirety of the population within it. Tensions were rising, people wanted answers, and Bernard had to think on his feet on how he was going to gain back the control that he so desperately desired. With an ending that showed that division was going to be the very thing that was at the heart of this season of the show, and that loyalties were also going to switch. Let's delve into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Silo Season 2 Episode 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The importance of Juliette going over the hill. Jules going over that hill is arguably the most important thing that's ever happened in the entirety of the show. Even though it hasn't caused severe consequences right now, it's gonna be the very thing that disrupts the peace and brings chaos into Silo 18. The phrase, "she went over the hill," was a motif that was repeated several times throughout the episode across all levels of the silo, whether it be higher up or lower down, so it really did highlight its importance. The sole reason that people are peaceful and content inside of the silo and don't look to go outside is because of the fear that's present within there of the air outside and the fact that you could die if you stepped out there. So the fact that the ever-appealing idea of a clean world and freedom was now on the horizon. Why would you just want to be cooped up inside of a silo if somebody's gone further than ever before? What was even more telling of its importance was the fact that Judge Meadows was the person who wanted to go outside the most and even said the phrase, "I want to go outside," to Bernard. So if she has the yearning to go outside and she lives one of the most comfortable lives within the silo, that feeling is definitely going to spread to the general population. Judge Meadows mentioned the Wizard of Oz and how at the end of the story the wizard managed to escape on the hot air balloon. That was symbolic of the journey that Meadows felt as though she'd been on whilst being the judge in Silo 18, and her being able to leave the silo matched that of the wizard leaving in his hot air balloon. Lower down the levels is where the effects were most felt by the general population, because that's where Shirley was essentially looking to lead some kind of rebellion with the hopes of looking to seek answers around if Jules was still alive out there. She believed that Jules was, and she also knew that Bernard was lying because he mentioned that the only reason that Jules survived was because of the new tape that was being worked on, despite the fact that it was tape that already existed and was sneakily put on Jules' suit by Walker. It confirmed to her that the higher-ups can't be trusted, so she's definitely going to use that as motive. It looks like the population is almost going to be split into two sections, believers and non-believers. And I think the non-believers will most likely be the ones that will resort to violence if they don't get the answers that they're looking for. There was a piece of graffiti that was popping up across different levels of Silo 18, and the symbol that was being painted was the letters JL, which stood for Juliette Lives. So the people that are mourning Jules, such as Walker, Shirley, Cooper, and the others from Mechanical, they'll most likely use that graffiti and spread it like wildfire. The silo was described as a tinderbox in this episode, and the message of Juliette living is the very thing that will send the silo up in flames in a literal sense and also a metaphorical sense. There was a really interesting scene with Jules' father in this episode. He was clearly grieving the loss of his daughter, but the uncertainty on if she was alive or not was a seed that was planted in his mind. During this episode, he was called back to work, and he was looking after this young baby girl that dislocated her shoulder. When he picked the baby up, he kept repeating, "Poor little girl, poor little girl." This was symbolic of how he felt about Jules. The fact that she was sent outside to clean, she didn't, then she walked over the hill and now didn't know if she was dead or alive. He felt sorry for Jules and was clearly in mourning, hence why this scene was so important. He may well have also been reflecting on the time that he lost with her due to never visiting down below and her believing that he was responsible for her mother's death. Just when their relationship was getting back on track, she was taken out of his life. I personally think he's going to join the rebellion in this season and be on the side of wanting to find out some answers. Jules going over the hill was also important for another reason. Paul is set to become sheriff, but as of now, all of the sheriff staff, including the sheriff himself, has to report into judicial. But the person that they report into specifically is Sims. Paul was always on the fence about Jules, and within the Season 1 finale, we saw that he was exposed to the outside world through the book that had been passed down through several generations of Flamekeepers. With Paul being exposed to this and also him witnessing Jules going over the hill, he now had doubts in his mind over the legitimacy of Jules wanting to go outside and the reasoning behind them all being kept inside of the silo. This is why he asked Sims how the events unfolded and for a statement. The fact that his statement was that Jules tried to escape despite claiming that it was herself who stated that she wanted to go outside, along with Bernard also destroying the relic, which was the hard drive. It didn't make sense to him, and I think we're now going to see the sheriff, the very person who's supposed to follow the laws and also implement them within the silos, now switching sides and becoming part of the rebellion. Almost like what we saw happening in Silo 17, where that sheriff ended up changing alliances and siding with the rebellion. The atmosphere in Silo 18 is at a point where it's never been before, and all of this is now happening simply because Juliette walked over that hill. Bernard's fear is something that's so clear to see based on everything that's occurred, and that's the next thing that we're going to be discussing in the video. Bernard's fear. The first thing we saw in the entirety of this episode was Bernard looking at Jules' bodycam footage as she walked over the hill and towards Silo 17, something only he was able to see. What we saw was him witnessing what Juliette was seeing, which was the sea of dead bodies that was a result of a failed rebellion and people believing that they could go outside in Silo 17. Bernard's face spoke 1,000 words in this frame here. He was petrified and saw what could potentially happen now that the peace and understanding of the silo had been disrupted by Jules. He feared that what he saw would be the fate of himself and the people in his silo. He even said that he wished that he just sent Jules down to the mines when the tape was originally stolen, as that would have eradicated the problem immediately. The fact that he ran straight to the order and was looking for an outcome and an answer showed that he wasn't prepared in the slightest for what was on the horizon, and that he simply didn't know what to do. He was alone and didn't feel like Sims was strong enough to be a shadow, so he turned to Meadows for help. This was seeing as though they'd known each other for a long while and felt like nobody knew him better than what she did. He got the judge's approval and backing when he explained about the tape to the people of the silo and got the majority of them back on side, but he knows that it's only a temporary solve. He's putting barriers in place to stop people from buying weapons, and I think he's going to prepare for war. I'm wondering if the direction that Judge Meadows is going to go in is to go outside like she wants to, and with the tape administered properly, look to go into Silo 17. Bernard is operating blind here as he quite literally doesn't have a clue what to do, so I'm intrigued to see how he's going to overcome the rebellion that's on the horizon. My review of the episode. I thought this was a great episode of the show. Following last week's episode where it was relatively contained and pretty quiet due to us just witnessing Jules in the silo on her own, it was nice to see the reaction of the people in Silo 18 and see the mood and feeling of the residents changing. I feel like Shirley and Knox having different opinions and views is something which is symbolic of the fact that change is definitely on the horizon on a mass scale. If those two can't see eye to eye, then I can't see somebody on the upper level and the lower level having similar views on the situation. Violence is definitely on the horizon. The fact that Walker was videoed in the cell talking about the tape is something which I think is going to come back and get her. The people don't know that their every move is being watched and recorded, so her and Carla being placed in a cell and being told that they were going to be interrogated made them naturally open up and get their story straight. So all of their answers were videoed. It was a smart move. I'm hoping next week's episode will have the story split between the two different silos. That way I think the story will start to progress in a more natural way. Plus we've got the mystery around who is behind the door, which still needs answering. Division was definitely something that was at the core of this episode, whether it be Shirley and Knox, Sims and Bernard, Paul and Sims, or the believers and the non-believers. It was clear to see throughout every level of the silo, and it's definitely going to erupt. Something that I can't wait to see happen. So, there you have it, Silo Season 2 Episode 2, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Silo Season 2, then click on the card in the top corner. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. What did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.